Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I'm your host, Brett Gilliland, and today I have the privilege to interview Katie Hoff. Katie, how you doing?
I'm great, Brett. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks for being with us. You were coming to us from New York, and I'm coming to you from St. Louis. Basically, we're both kind of lying. You're in New York, but New Jersey. I'm in St. Louis, but in Illinois. But
Yeah.
we all get it. It makes sense, right? Well, good. It's so awesome to be with you. For those listeners that may not know who Katie is, she is a two-time Olympian, three-time Olympic medalist, eight-time world champion, which is a big deal. All those, and then an author. The book Blueprint comes out on Black Friday this year. You can get it on Amazon and probably all the other major places. But so it's great to have you with us. So thanks so much for your time.
Oh my gosh, of course. Yeah, when you reached out to me, I was excited. I feel honored to be in the group of all your guests. So
well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So one of the listeners that may not know the backstory to who Katie Hoff is, what kind of, I always like to say, what's made you the woman you are today? I know that's a big open question, but if you could kind of boil that down to some things for us.
Yeah, I would say, a couple things. So relentless is the first thing that comes to mind. I think, as a swimmer, an athlete, a person, to get to where I, am today, to feel like I'm extraordinary and accomplishing, great things, I've had to be relentless because like anyone, there's ups and downs and obstacles. And there's been a lot of those in my career. As high as the highs have been, the lows have been equally as low. And I think that's really what's allowed me to keep getting back up every time I'm hit with something. And I think the other big thing about me that I've learned over the years is I'm pretty good at embracing the suck, just through the process of, thousands and thousands of meters staring at a black line to the transition from retiring as a professional athlete and moving into kind of my swammer normal person years.
Sure.
Definitely had to embrace, and trust the process.
Yeah. So I think it's amazing to think about when you say embrace the suck. I mean, I'm a amateur below an amateur below an amateur of a swimmer, but to your point, like I've done a few triathlons and you swim in that stuff and you see this thing going back and forth, right, when you're training. And so, I mean, what was that like? I mean, you didn't really know much better. It seemed to me like in my research, you swam pretty much your whole life. And I want to talk about a letter you wrote when you were 12 years old to yourself and all that stuff. So what was that like though, on days you didn't want to go look at that black line? How did you battle through it and get in that pool anyway?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's funny when I look back at the different stages in my career, when I was younger, probably ages 10 to 15, 16, it didn't ever feel like a choice. It was like you said, it was just something that I just always did, and getting in and doing 10,000 meters and coming back later on a Saturday and swimming on Sunday, that just was the norm. That's just what I did. And now I look back on it, I'm like, that was crazy. And then I think as you became more of an adult and, matured and understood what was in front of me, it was really defining and understanding my why, defining my goals. And then it was like, well, if the goal outweighs the obstacle, I'm just going to do it, whether it sucks, whether I'm tired, whether I want to give up. And I'm not going to lie, there were tons of times throughout my career where I thought I was going to quit, or, I just felt like I couldn't keep going, or I didn't want to get up when the alarm went off. But it almost was like this unseen force that kept pulling me back up, even when I didn't think I could, again, because the goal of feeling extraordinary, accomplishing great things, racing to try to be the best in the world, really just outweighed anything that was kind of in front of me that was going to be a challenge.
And did you think your purpose, obviously that's what drove you, right? But did that come from within at an early age, or is that something as you were growing and becoming better, probably as like you said, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, I think you were 15 when you had your first world championship, or for actually the Olympics, right?
The Olympics. Yeah.
15 years old.
Sped up really fast. I mean, I think, there's a very short period of time when I can remember, 5 or 6, where I didn't really catch the competitive obsessive bug quite yet. I remember doing lunges behind my coach, and the coach would turn their back and I would do like a little jog to try to get out of doing lunges. And then it was something that went off in my head probably about 9 years old, where I'd say I discovered this deep down gear where we were racing in practice and something went off in my head where I just was not okay with losing, and figured out how to kind of find this extra gear with my stroke. And from that point on, I was, obsessive with doing everything perfectly. And that was all internal. That was not, I feel like I was very fortunate to have parents who just let me be in the driver's seat and just supported me. And I also had coaches who at that point, 9 and 10, were like, just go have fun, go race. There was no external pressure. And I think that just allowed me to take charge of it and have ownership and just go 100 miles per hour and never look back.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing too, is that, and I think it's a big deal, your parents. I'm glad you said that, because for them, obviously the support and the driving around and the money and all the stuff it takes to be an athlete, right? Is a pretty big deal. And so, but I think to go to the level you went to, right, to get to the Olympics, I mean, just getting there is one thing, but then being successful and getting the medals and doing all the stuff you did, I mean, the day-to-day commitment, I think, is what's impressive to me. Right. And so when I see people in the business world today, whether it's a business idea or a business meeting, it's just your commitment to excellence. Right. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I very much agree with you. I think when people ask me, how do you make an Olympic team? How do you be successful? How do you be successful at anything in life? It comes down to consistency. I would watch people really put in all the effort for 1 week and then fall off another week. And that just, I feel like, destroys your momentum. It destroys everything that you've been working for. And again, I think it's just being able to define and lock in, why are you doing this? And it can't just be, I think sometimes people are like, yeah, my why, my goal, like it gets thrown around a lot, right? And I think it can't be like, oh, I would like to accomplish it. It has to be like, I need to accomplish this just as much as I need air, as I need food. Like it has to be that intense. And I think it's, and I would say, and equally, like if you don't have that why, burning, deep, desired why, you have to go after finding it just as hard. So I say that because I stopped swimming, and then it was like, okay, well now what? What am I going for? How do I
Who am I?
Right? Who am I? How do I be consistent in this, day-to-day pursuit? Because if you don't have that, you will give up. You will not be consistent because it doesn't matter enough. And so I think, for really anyone in any endeavor, they've got to be able to define that, or switch endeavors, or change something, or it's probably the hardest thing to find. But once you find it, I feel like it's not easy, but everything falls into place really well. Yeah.
And I think I've always said too, the why, if you find your why, in my opinion, everybody's different, but I'd like to have, 7, 10, 15 reasons why that's my why. Right. Yeah. Because then when reason number 1, I don't really feel like it today, right? Then you're like, oh, but how about reason 2 or reason 3 or reason 4, right? And so would you agree with that? Was it about the gold medal or just going to the Olympics? What was it about?
It's funny. I think after I figured that out a lot better when I was removed from the sport. I think in the sport, the times that I struggled was when I wasn't winning, or I wasn't winning Olympic medals, or I felt like I was having a down year. And I really struggled because my identity was so wrapped up, because I started at so young in Katie Hoff, the Olympic swimmer, Katie Hoff, the Olympic medalist. And if I wasn't doing those things, I was lost, and I felt like I had no self-confidence, and I couldn't push in the way that I normally did. And I think the biggest thing I realized was swimming was just a vehicle. It's not the reason why I was getting up, the reason why I was pushing, the reason why I had such a work ethic was the feeling that I got doing something and feeling extraordinary. And now that's kind of what I've been able to get here 5 years later after I retired. I'm like, okay, that's what my why. I want to feel extraordinary, and feeling extraordinary is feeling like I'm making an impact positively. I'm inspiring people. I stand out in some way, and that's my why. And there's tons of things under that, like you mentioned, but again, it takes a lot of work to get to that point in anything you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's amazing too. You look at that you talk about the why and the how and all that kind of stuff, but on the bad days, right? The days where, because I don't have people follow me around like camera people, and you're on TV and all this stuff. And so when you have a failure, when you're doing the things at the level you were doing, they're much more exposed than say if I have a failure, right? So how did you deal with that emotionally? So if, and again, I'm thinking of the person listening to this right now, they're exercising, they're driving in their car, whatever they're doing, and they're like, gosh, Katie, you don't understand. I had this bad thing happen at work. Well, it's not on the magnitude of like ESPN, right? But it's a big deal in their world.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
how did you overcome that? How did you deal with it? How did you fight through it?
Yeah. That's actually the question I love the most, and the subject I love talking about the most, because it's way more like, it's way more relatable, and it happened to me a lot more than I would say the successes. I think,
Okay.
to get to a big success, you have to have a ton of failures. I think number one is just kind of embracing it and grieving. I think the worst thing you can do is obviously, not in a very public setting or complaining or anything like
Sure.
that, but surround yourself with your trust tree, surround yourself with your, your mentors, your family, people who understand you, and grieve. Like if you don't allow yourself to feel, then it's just going to get pushed down, and it's going to manifest itself in a really negative way later on. So for me, I felt like I was always in a really great spot where I was allowed to do that and feel and go through it. And then it was like, okay, now you've done that, push it aside, learn from it, and move forward. And again, constantly analyzing and redefining, okay, like, why am I doing this? Like, you have to keep, I feel like my why and all those reasons underneath changed throughout my 10-year career, and changed now into my life as a speaker and an author. And I think that's a lot of times when people fail, they don't do those things, and so things get all intertwined and mixed up, and they lose sight of that, that top of the mountain for them. And maybe you move mountaintops sometimes because that mountain's not the right mountain, but you've got to keep redefining it.
Because you certainly can start to walk up the wrong mountain, right? And be like, oh, I got to turn back and go around, right? Go to a different mountain, like you said.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think, people surrounding you, the right people surrounding you, I think makes everything better. I think I could credit so many coaches, my husband, my family, for really allowing me in those times where I was just at rock bottom, of helping me understand, like, hey, here's your identity, you're loved no matter what. And I think even in the business world, like, you spend 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week doing this one thing. And it's so easy to be in this bubble and lose sight of all the other things that are great in this world, even if you mess up on a project, or, you don't get the promotion, or those things that are so important to you in that moment.
So talk about that to the person again. They were at the top of their mountain, right? And maybe with this COVID coronavirus stuff, their mountain got kind of demolished for them, right? Without their choice, and it just happened to them. So when you unfortunately got news that you had to retire, right? And so in my research, I'm gonna butcher the name, but you had and with the lungs of all things, right? I think you kind of need your lungs.
In swimming, it's fine.
What's that?
I say you don't need those in swimming. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I don't need those. I don't need those at all. Yeah. So, again, your COVID, if you will, was a lung disease in a sport where you obviously need your lungs. And so that just happens pretty quickly, I would assume. So what's that process like? Did you go with a journal off into the woods somewhere and dream and strategize about what the next step is? Or what advice would you have for them?
Yeah, it's funny. I have compared that a lot of, right? Like so many business owners, so many professionals did nothing wrong. They could have been absolutely crushing it. COVID happens and it's out of your control. Similarly, I got a pulmonary embolism. Really, the biggest injury I ever had in swimming. I was very fortunate. I never had any of the normal type of injuries.
Yeah.
I think for me, the advice I would give is to not do what I did. I think I suppressed feelings longer than I should have. Like I grieved, and then I just kept suppressing. And I think the pain of, not being able to end my career on my own terms took a few years for me to get through. So if I had to give advice, for someone who's going through it now, it's like, yes, grieve, be upset, be pissed off, be angry, let all those emotions come out. And then, sit down with someone, mentors, and figure out a list of 10 things that you can control to get you back on track. And maybe there are little wins of the day of like just the smallest thing, but it makes you feel like you're taking just that little step towards getting back up on the top of the mountain.
Yep.
And I wish that I had done that a little bit better now that I'm looking back, because I'd be having conversations like this maybe 2 years ago instead of 5 years removed from my career.
Yeah, and I think you'll probably agree with this then. I call that the bounce back theory. And so the most successful people, whether it's people I've been blessed to work with throughout the years, if it's people through this podcast the last number of years, or just any professionals in my life, the ones that get bounce back quicker, right? You get negative news and some people can go in their room and cry about it. And, you know, I'm joking about but really, right? You go in your room and kind of play, I'm a pessimist. The world's coming to an end. It's never going to work for me. Poor me. Right. And then you have the people that like snap of a fingers, bad news. That sucks. I don't like it. I got to deal with it. And then they move on. Right. They move back quicker.
Absolutely.
So I think to your point, I mean, to the people listening that may be struggling with something, is deal with it. Like you said, like Katie said, but you got to move on. Right. And then find that team and embrace that team. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, exactly. I think, again, like I think being able to I think being able to understand how you operate. Like for me, it's talking to multiple different people before I can feel like I'm back in my logical mode. So I go to the emotion first. I know that about myself. I do that. And then it's like, okay, let's talk it out. Let's figure out what I like to do, and almost anticipate too, you know, that this new path, whatever it may be from, you know, being knocked down, you may hit some failures. I think anticipating that also helps. So anticipating that, okay, maybe like if I'm trying this, here are the potential outcomes, and being, you know, braced for it and prepared for it. You know, I know I'm such a planner. I do really well when I know something's coming my way. So getting to that point where you understand yourself to know what works for you. Sometimes people, it's journaling. Sometimes it's, you know, listening to a bunch of podcasts. Sometimes, you know, what is that thing that helps you bounce back, because each person is different. I think is a big strength to have.
So what have you learned now about yourself that you can share that is about your passions today, right? Obviously you're this top of the world in the Olympic world, and now you're here in this new world, and you're going to climb and be right at the top, already getting towards the top, right? That speaking world, author world, going to be a best-selling book. All these things are going to happen, right? What have you found about your passions today?
Yeah, I think I found a couple things. I think I found that I'm really good at being just authentically vulnerable. And I think that that's, you know, when I think about wanting to feel that extraordinary feeling and wanting to impact others positively, I think that's a big strength of mine. And I guess strength that I had to redevelop, because I was closed off for so long and didn't kind of let those emotions in. So that's something that I'm excited to be able to share my story very authentically, very vulnerably to audiences, as well as my book. My book is very vulnerable. I tell all. And so I think for me, that's something that I'm really embracing right now. And then kind of coming back to my swimming roots, and, you know, the company that my husband and I started, it's called Synergy Dryland. And it's a program that helps, again, swimmers right now and into the future control what they can control, which is to get strong on land, body weight movements, and just making sure that they feel as prepared and as strong as possible, no matter what the circumstance.
I love that. I love that. And authentically vulnerable. I wrote that down. And so talk to us about that. What's an example from the book, if you can share without giving too much away, so people will buy the book, but what's something that's vulnerable? Because I think, to me, vulnerability leads to better relationships, right? It leads to different, deeper connections, whether that's at work or at home. And if we keep it all in, it's harder to have that relationship. So can you share anything on that front?
Yeah, I think two things. So in 2008, you know, they kind of pick, you know, a male and a female to really highlight. And my year in 2008 just happened to be when that guy, Michael Phelps, was trying to win 8 gold medals. And
I've heard of him.
Yep. And because I swam 5 events, and I would swam a lot of different events, and we were from the same home club, and like so many comparisons were made, which was a huge honor. But, you know, the limelight and the comparisons were, I felt, in my opinion, a bit unfair. I wasn't trying to win 8 gold medals. And
Sure.
so the way that my Olympic Games was framed was very much as a failure, even though, as you said at the start of this, like 3 Olympic medals, that's
Right.
amazing. That's not the feeling I felt, and that's not the feeling that
Ugh.
was framed. And so I really get into kind of like, for the first time, how that felt, and what that put me through, and what it feels like, again, to feel like you hit rock bottom, and then what do you do to get back up.
Sure.
And so I talk a lot about that, which was really painful, but really happy that I did. And then really dove super deep into the transition, which I think, retiring from something that you've done for 20 years of your life, which I think, people in business too, right? You switch careers, you retire, just in general. Okay, now who are you? And I really made sure that I did a good job of just explaining everything that I felt, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how I kind of got back up and reached where I am today, which is still a work in progress. But I think that's something really important. I don't know if you were able to see the Weight of Gold documentary.
Was not, no.
So Michael actually directed it,
Okay.
Michael Phelps. It's on HBO, and it just highlights that. It just highlights the, the post-Olympic blues, and what it feels like to be at the top of something, and then just feel like the ground comes out from under you. And it's always kind of this taboo subject of, well, as an athlete, you're supposed to be tough, you're supposed to be fine. You don't talk about, I think in general society, that mental side, or that you went and saw a psychologist, like that is still not super mainstream and super normal.
Right. Absolutely.
Oh, something's wrong with you if you have to go to a psychologist.
Right.
It's like, no, like that's just, you need a coach for everything else in your life.
Yeah.
You definitely need a coach for your brain.
Yeah, right here is the most important one, probably.
Exactly. So I just really, it felt really good to be able to share that side of what I was going through, that people probably suspected, but really only my husband and my family knew I was going through it. And so I wanted people who were either going to be in my kind of shoes or feeling like they were the only one. I didn't want them to feel alone. So.
Well, thank you for that perspective, because that's exactly the way I look at it right now, is perspective. So I get on here today thinking, holy smokes, 8 world championships, 3-time Olympic medalist. But then yet, to your point, right, the perspective was shifted, and it made you feel like, well, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but maybe that 3 was a failure because I was supposed to do X, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was supposed to be the Michelle Phelps, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Versus Michael Phelps. And so that's amazing to me, because I think that you're right. And I think when we hit success in the business world or the Olympics, the most susceptible we are to failure is right after that success, right? You let your guard down, don't you think?
I think a little bit. Yeah. I mean, I think it's also even if I, like, athletes that go, like, say I had won 8 gold medals, like, you still have, like, Michael experienced it. He won 8 gold medals, the most decorated Olympian all time, and he's still feeling like, now what? There's that build up, and then it's like, you just killed yourself, and now what? And
when you're also so darn young, right? It's not like you're ending your career and it's like, you're 65 or whatever, like you would retire.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know how old Michael Phelps is, but he's not very old.
No, yeah. I mean, he's usually right off 4 years. So he's 35 now. But in 2008, I had just turned 19, and to go and put, I mean, you're putting your blood, sweat, tears, like everything in hours on end. You're taking this huge risk because you're putting all your eggs in one basket, and then when it doesn't go well to your expectations, even though I felt like I still had some good swims, and I broke an American record and ended up not being a medal. That's just how competitive it was. And so again, like, it has taken me a really long time to feel proud of my medals, to feel proud of those performances. And I think that was the hardest part of, like, yeah, I'm still 19, my career's not over, but how the heck do I, pick myself back up again? And kind of going back to what we were talking about, it didn't really feel like an option. It's like, well, yeah, I'm going to pick myself back up because I have to, because this is my world and my goal, and all of those things. So.
Well, it's funny, and I know you know this name, but Jackie Joyner-Kersee. So I'm friends with Jackie Joyner-Kersee, and she's just phenomenal. She's here in St. Louis, but it's amazing though, that impact, because what you did at a young age, what she did at a young age, the impact will continue forever, right? If you choose to let it continue, because not everybody can do what you've done. And so I think, with this book, with you and your husband's business, I mean, that's where the impact is at. So when you hear that word impact or future greater than your past, even though your past was great, how does that future become better than your past?
It feels really good and really validating, I think is the best word I can say, because everything, someone said this one time, it's just in terms of like the aha moment of when you maybe don't reach the pinnacle. Like I didn't
Right.
win a gold medal, which was my ultimate goal. I did a lot of other things, but the qualities and the skill sets that I developed of chasing that ultimate goal is now helping me so much and coming back tenfold in my life now. And it took me forever, not
Yeah.
forever, but it felt like forever to figure that out of, wow, like I have these skills and these instincts that I could have never developed if I didn't go through this whirlwind of ups and downs in my career. And now that, kind of the world feels like it's opening up once I realized that, it's just like, it's a very overwhelming and definitely like some emotional times where I just feel this feeling of relief and validation of, wow, like I went through all that work and it
Right.
still means something. And now it's carrying through to mean even more than I ever thought.
Was that helpful that your husband is a former Michigan State football player, played in the NFL, played here in St. Louis, and probably,
Yes.
I don't know if he played anywhere else, but here in St. Louis. So does that help? I mean, does it help that you guys can sit back maybe on the balcony and have a glass of wine and say, remember those days, right?
Yes. Well, definitely on the wine because we're both love wine. But yeah,
Even if we don't talk about the old days, we'll just drink wine, right?
Yeah. No, I am so fortunate to have, I met him in 2012. And so he kind of got to see, actually, like I made my comeback before I had my pulmonary embolism, but he kind of got to see a little bit of a, look at my sport. I got to see a look at his sport, and his mindset is so similar, right? Just of that elite, relentless, go after it at all costs. And so being able to have him by my side and being able to feel comfortable to open up and be vulnerable and cry to him and talk everything out was huge. And I think, not everyone understands that. And so having, your partner in life and your partner in crime be that person was something, is something I'm so grateful
Very
for.
lucky. Very lucky.
Yeah.
So what can you tell? What'd you learn? You said you were in the same swim team, I guess, as Michael Phelps. So what'd you learn from watching Michael? I mean, obviously everybody around the world watched him, and there's so many things you can take away, but what did you specifically think learn from him?
So we were on the same club, but we kind of had this like party, like we had 1 year at the same time because he was living at Michigan. But I've known Michael since I was 14 years old, and we obviously saw him on the national team. I think the biggest thing I always tell people is just Michael's ability to just keep driving at this high intensity. Like I think you see this in people like Tiger Woods, LeBron James, Lance Armstrong, regardless of your opinion of other outside factors. But there's this extra level that's, I don't think people can even comprehend, but some of the stuff that he would do in workouts, and then his just ability to do what he did in Beijing. I had a very similar schedule, so I can tell you firsthand just how hard it is to get up and be that laser focused for 8 days, 9 days straight. It's truly remarkable. So I think that's his biggest, weapon is, yes, like, you can talk about the dimensions of his arms and all that stuff, but I think, that mental piece from him is one of the biggest thing that sets him apart.
Yeah. And that's really for all of us. Right. And I think, you said something, some of those names and they've done amazing things. I'm reading this book right now. It's called Halftime. And so you're probably too young to read it still, but they recommend, I'm 42 years old. And so it talks about being basically around halftime in my life, especially my work life, right? Mm-hmm. To where what's that next thing? So it talks about from success to significance. And and it's very thought provoking, but he talks about in this book, these huge names that have this huge success. And we're not going to dive into this stuff, so don't worry, I'm not going to put you on the spot. but you see some of the personal things, right, that happen in their lives, right? Some of the choices that are being made.
Yeah.
And I think that, and we're all could be guilty of it again, maybe our choices aren't on ESPN again, like we would talk about, but how did you overcome that to where you don't go to those choices, right? What grounded you in that level?
I think it's a great question. I've actually never been asked that. I mean, like you said, I definitely wasn't perfect. I think when I look back, I just flung myself into like I started at an entry level job, and I was like, I'm going to redefine myself as a corporate, salesperson. And I thought that was the right thing to do. Maybe it was. I feel like probably my coworkers thought I was crazy sometimes because I was, overly sensitive, and certain things would trigger me because I still hadn't processed everything, and I didn't feel normal. I didn't feel right.
Did they embrace you as normal? Or were they more of like, oh, she's an Olympic athlete, so of course she's different?
No, I mean, yeah, I think because I basically, I went to sales and I carried over all of like my obsessive qualities. I just like went over. So, I mean, I was good at it because that's what salespeople need to be, like relentless, aggressive, like, but I think that it was a blessing and a curse in that way. Like, I was just like, okay, well, I need to be good at something else. And I was so obsessed with that I just started over. But on the other coin, it then took me longer to kind of come to terms with things, but I didn't really allow myself time to act out or kind of go into that I guess those weird choices that would be if you're idle, right? Like I wasn't ever idle to go down that path. And I just think it's my personality is I just constantly feel like I need to be, I wanted to redefine what extraordinary was. And I just searched for it down multiple different paths before I found it again.
Did you put a lot of fears in your mind? And I'll ask the follow-up question, but I want to ask that one first. But did you put a lot of fears as you were going through this Olympic, kind of the trials and all the things to get there? Did you put fears in your mind?
I think as things started progressing, I made the decision to go professional at 16, and I've always got to ask a lot of like, did that create fear, extra pressure? And the answer is no for that one, because I was already so intense with what I was doing that I put enough. I was like, no one can put more pressure on me than me. Yeah. So having, it just excited me that, what I was doing, I was able to earn money for my future and set up my future. And that was exciting for me. Yeah. In terms of heading into 2004 at the age of 15, making the team, and then suddenly having the expectations of winning medals, that definitely created a little bit of fear in terms of more confidence in my abilities. Yeah. And then in 2008, it was not as much fear, just feeling overwhelmed, I think was more of just the schedule. Like the schedule was really big. I had just done it at trials, and I just kept the pressure that I was putting on myself, and then outside pressures just kept mounting. So it felt like I had like a piano on my back. Yeah, yeah. But in terms of fear, I don't feel like it was ever fear, because I had the confidence I feel like anytime someone's fearful, they don't have confidence in their own abilities.
I love that. Because my follow-up question always I've asked everybody just about is, how many of the fears, though, you did put in your mind actually blew up to the magnitude you put them in your mind to be?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would say if I had to think of a nightmare situation, is going to your first Olympics and throwing up all over the pool deck in front of millions of people. That actually happened. So
did it really?
Yeah.
Hey, good news is I did not see that, Katie, in all my research.
It was the first image for like 3 years after 2004, but it's finally faded into a movie. But my parents tried to, it was like me literally.
Right. Like, how big is the check? How big can I get rid of this thing, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I was basically, I didn't have that confidence. I was really nervous at the trial 6 weeks prior, so I took it out too fast. So I was sitting in the ready room in Athens, Greece. Never been out of the country before, never been on the national team, just turned 15. I looked like I was 12, like a very like young, naive 15, and was just so freaked out that I was going to do the same thing again. And I did the same thing again. And it was so painful. And I was in such oxygen deprivation that I physically got ill all over the pool deck. First event, first day, cameras surrounded me, pictures everywhere. So that was my Olympic debut.
Lovely. Right. Welcome to the big show. Right.
Yeah. So
well, as a fellow puker, I was a guy that did the same thing back in the day. I used to, whether it was in sports in junior high, high school, I mean, I would get so nervous, and I didn't realize it was an oxygen thing, but I would get sick as well. And I think that, you know, what I hear from that is you felt the fear, right? Literally got sick.
Yeah.
But you did what? You did it anyway. Right. And
yeah,
so you battled through
after the race. This was after.
Oh, as after. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely, when I was younger, I'd get that, like, the nerves, right? But this was actually physically from like lactic acid buildup.
Got it.
So intense that I was in so much pain that I threw up everywhere. But then I still had another event 2 days later. So to your point, I just had to kind of get back up and figure it out and deal with it anyways. And I ended up making the finals in that second event. I didn't medal, but I still was able to kind of get experience in an Olympic final, swimming in front of the TV, so that, you know, in 2008, I was that much more ready and experienced.
So I'm a big fan and follower of Jesse Itzler. And I know that you and your hubby got to go see Jesse Itzler and his wife. She's semi-successful. Sarah Blakely, for those that don't know Jesse Itzler, Sarah Blakely, she started Spanx. Unbelievable story. Both of them are uber successful in their own rights. And then they come together. Oh, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And you guys get to go spend the day with them.
Yeah. It's just really crazy how it all happened. I mean, I've been a fan for a really long time. My husband worked at Equinox, and so he got to see Jesse speak at actually one of Equinox's forums, and that was like probably 4 years ago. And I had I've been working on my corporate speeches. And so we had a similar speaking coach from January. And I just was kind of in this mode, of like this fearless mode, where I was just like, you know, I'm going to just reach out to people that I really admire and just ask them if they have a couple minutes to maybe give me a couple points of wisdom. I've got my book coming out. I'm trying to speak. And Jesse responded within 6 hours, like that. And so he and I FaceTimed, we talked a little bit, and then I found out he was doing this ultrathon, and I was like, well, obviously I'll give you a swim lesson in return. And he was just like, come out, we're in Connecticut, we're like an hour and a half away, and just ended up having just an awesome day, awesome conversation. Just felt, I mean, honestly, like strip away anything that they've done, business, like any of that stuff. They're just the most kind, down-to-earth people that just, my husband and I left and we were like, we just want to be better people after being around them. Like the way that their kids interacted with us, we were just like, you can do it all. You can have kids, you can run businesses. It just, I mean, just so inspired. Yeah.
Well, he makes me think a lot at night when I'm, you know, with 4 kids and I'm busy and it's been a crazy day and, you know, you're kind of exhausted. And he's like, you know, he always talks about never too tired for my kids.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like those messages he's very, very powerful, very powerful. I did the Build Your Life resume thing with him. I guess it was last year. Sometime. So that was pretty cool. So, well, this has been awesome. And so your book, tell us a little bit about it. We said Blueprint comes out Black Friday of this year, 2020. And obviously you had a lot of inspiration to write that from your own story, but tell us a little bit about the book.
Yeah, so I would say definitely, you know, categorize it as a memoir. So it's Blueprint, Olympian story of striving, adapting, and embracing the suck. It's kind of the
embracing
little
the suck.
Embracing the suck. And so, yeah, I definitely kind of go into like the normal, you know, defining what I was like as a kid, my obsessive qualities, fighting with my grandma on a badminton court at 11 because we weren't winning. I mean, I go into just how competitive and annoying I was as a little kid. And then I really, in part 1 of the book, I really go through, again, like the ups and downs of 2004 throwing up on the pool deck. How did I get to the 8 world championship titles to 2008? And then, you know, part 2 is a lot of kind of getting back up again and how I transitioned. You know, I'm actually very happy that I waited to write it, because if I just stopped when my career was done, I wouldn't have been able to really, you know, talk about that transition that I think is just so important. And the blueprint comes from really everyone in life has their blueprint, right? They have their design plan of what their life's going to look like, and how many times does an architect with a blueprint have to adjust and pivot and make little edits in order for things to be successful. And that's truly how my career in life has been, of just making little pivots, little edits, because things just don't go according to plan.
No, they do not. Well, I can't wait to order the book and read the book. And I've never done this on a podcast, but today I did a what's called F5, F to the fifth power. I hosted a live event with Sam Rudolph. She is the founder and inventor of the world's smallest and quietest breast pump, of all things.
Oh, that's awesome.
John Smith, who is the inspiration behind the movie Breakthrough. If you've not seen it and you want to watch a movie tonight, watch Breakthrough. Phenomenal. And then Konzo Martin, who's the head coach of Missouri men's basketball team. So those three, and then me, I got to be the guy asking the questions. And so I talk about F to the fifth power: your faith, your family, your firm, what I call, or work, your fitness, and your fun. Okay. And I already messed up the thing I've never done before. I was going to have you pick 1 through 5, pick a number between 1 through 5.
Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah, because I can't remember what you said anymore.
Exactly.
Let's do 4.
Number 4 was fitness. So we
that's
know that one. Well, perfect, right? So when you hear those 5 things, your faith, your family, your fitness, or your firm, your fitness, and your fun, what's the most important thing that you can leave people right now? Your average Joes, just like me, your average Sally's, just like whoever's listening to this. When you think about fitness, what can you leave us with to be better?
Consistency.
Consistency,
without a doubt. And if I have to cheat, if I can cheat and add one more thing,
absolutely.
It's like, finding what you love, even if it's not like the perfect scientific thing that you read, right? Like, what are you going to love? That means you're going to do it consistently. Like, if you pick something, like I hear so many people go like, God, I hate running. I gotta get myself to like running. Right. Why? Like,
it's not going to happen.
Force it's not going to happen. So if Zumba and you love dancing and you're moving and that's what you're going to do consistently, do that. So I think that's definitely something I've learned. Even after swimming, I had to redefine my fitness routine too. And I do things that I like. So.
And the last 2 questions in this one, besides Blueprint, what book would you recommend somebody buy because it was impactful in your life?
That's a great question. I would say Andre Agassi's Open is a really, really good one. I just feel like the vulnerability of it really impacted my book. Like when I was thinking about how I would do a memoir, that one impacted. And I mean, both of Jesse's books are phenomenal.
Right? Living with the Monk and Living with the Seals.
Living with the Seal was actually really, after reading that and then, having seen the lake that everything happened and seen this, the sauna, the steam room, it was all just kind of came to life. So I mean, his books are so good. Yeah,
they are. So final question for you. I steal your cell phone from you right now. Besides email, because that's boring, what's the one app or one thing off of your phone that I can't delete, and why?
Instagram.
I've been hearing that one a lot.
I was going to say TikTok, but I feel like I've been getting super into TikTok during quarantine, but Instagram, I just think I feel like it's the fastest way to share your message and, who you are. And then it's also so fun. I feel like it's not weird anymore to be like, oh yeah, I saw you did this, this, and this. It's like not stalker anymore. It's just being able to keep up with people you love and admire. And
well, I mean, exactly how we're here right now, right? How did we connect? It's not like we know each other. I connected with you on Instagram. I sent you a message. You responded. You gave me your team. And next thing you know, here we are. And I've had a blast. And so just thanks so much for being with us. I've learned a lot. I think our listeners will take a ton away from this. Again, Blueprint comes out on Black Friday this year. And where can our listeners also find more of who Katie Hoff is?
Yeah, so I'm going to say I post a lot on Instagram. So KT Hoff 7 because lane 7 was
Ah,
in 2004. I made my first Olympic team from lane 7. So
that's all. I actually wondered that. That's awesome.
yeah. And then my website, kthoff.com as well. So I would
Okay.
say those 2 places the most.
We will put that in the show notes. And Katie Hoff, thanks so much for being with us today on the Circuit of Success. It's been awesome.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.